There it goes.
Good evening. Tonight we watched the classic comedy Big, with a very young cast of familiar characters. Let's start by identifying the 4 through lines. The first one we'll do is the overall story, the big picture. So what, to paraphrase it in a single sentence, what is the big picture about? Easy.
A young boy becomes big and has to figure out how to live in the adult world.
Okay. Yeah, you can say a boy, a young.
A boy, a 13-year-old boy. A boy in a man's body has to navigate the world.
Okay, so a boy ends up in an adult's body and of course everything else is good. Who is the main character?
Young Hand.
Pardon?
Young Hand.
Which the character's name is? Yes. And the influence character?
Susan.
Yeah.
Susan.
And what is the nature of the relationship? Romantic. Okay. That's really easy.
All right.
Yay! Okay. Now, what is Josh's friend's name?
Billy.
Billy. What role does Billy play in this? Really interesting.
Well, he's mostly sidekick, but there's a little bit of conscience in there. So he's kind of a combination, I think, of sidekick and guardian.
Isn't he kind of a protagonist? What is the goal?
Okay.
Oh, right. Finds
Yeah,
all
well-
trying to get the machine.
Trying to become a boy.
Right.
Who is the one who is pushing toward getting that to happen? Every single time, it's Billy.
Oh.
So that's, you don't think of it because he kind of looks like a sidekick because he's young, et cetera, but he is certainly the driver in the relationship. Josh is not. Josh is much more his sidekick than vice versa.
I feel like though he's also helped.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's
so much other stuff.
I don't think he's an archetypal protagonist, but if there was such a thing in that story, it is definitely not Josh. It is Billy. He's the one. What's the goal? The overall story. Now remember, the overall story is a good portion of this, but the goal is pretty specific, and whenever it comes to the specific about undoing the wish, it's Billy. The only time that it isn't is the next morning when he leaves home and he goes to go check so he can unwish it being big, and it's gone. That's the only time Josh really is the one who is the go-getter. After that, Billy is the one who is really trying to pursue that. Like Billy sort of understands what the problem is. He takes up that mantle. And the reason I wanted to bring that up now is because it makes it really clear that Josh and Billy have different functions in the overall story. That Josh isn't the main character, isn't the protagonist. I think it's really important. When you see him being pushed from one place to the other, he is not the one who's. I mean, in that business world, you definitely have some pursuit characters. Not necessarily as far as the overall story goal goes. So they're characteristics of those players, but they aren't with regard to the narrative.
So would the antagonist be the Zoltar machine?
No. The Zoltar does not make it difficult.
Okay, all right. But because it is kind of avoiding, it's like it disappears. And
no, what do you mean? It's there in the middle of the story. He walks right by it.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, if Billy's the protagonist, then who would be the antagonist?
Well, who is making it difficult? Who's the one who is making it difficult for him to be an adult? The closest thing would be that the rival. Susan's ex-boyfriend. John Hurd is the actor.
Yeah.
You're right. He's the closest thing to
What
antagonist.
about the bureaucracy that takes 6 weeks? Is that
No, that would sound like
A
a.
hinder.
No. Yeah, I think it might be a time lock if we were going to have a time lock, but we don't have actually a number. We don't really watch the clock.
Right.
But that is a setup for a time lock. But she says, but it takes a month to process. Usually it's 6 months. If you're lucky, it could be longer. So it really isn't a lock. So they're just saying here's about the amount of time that saying it can't happen now, right? But that would be the nature of what a time lock would look like if it was going to enforce it. But the film did. So let's look at our main character resolve, changes steadfast. So does Josh stay the course, or does he change? Does he change? Does he switch his paradigm? He changes.
he changes because he wants to be big, and at the end he wants to be a kid.
How long does he want to be big? He says, I want to be big. He gets big. How long does he want to stay big? About 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Then he goes and rushes off to go try to change back into big small.
Right.
Right. So it is. He meet the conflict comes not from him becoming big, but from him not wanting to continue to be big.
You don't think that changes towards the end when he's yelling at his friend, saying, "I have a meeting. This is important."
No, actually, no. I think because what you
you
see
think
is
that's him
you see
almost
two.
changing?
Okay,
That's what
Yeah,
growth
and then
is.
he
there's two
Basically,
paths.
the
There's
pressure,
Yeah.
the pressure to change. That's indicative of the pressure that he is changing. But ultimately, he changes back by
basically,
choice.
the two value systems.
dynamic.
The what? The what?
Sweeney's dynamic.
Well, yeah, coincidentally. Yeah, the two paths, the two thematic value systems are, being adult with all the jaded, cynicism and and overthinking things, and then there's the boyhood paradigm, which is just
The childhood paradigm.
right, the simplistic and having fun and
Honest.
and honest. And I think the head of the company, I guess he's the head, right? He's kind of a conscience character. He's kind of a guardian who says,
Certainly a health character.
right, and that and so there's two forces there. You can see two value systems very clearly battling it out, and Josh represents the more childlike, which wins out in the end. And so since he chooses that, even though he was going down the dark side, which is the adult path, he veers back. So he would be a steadfast character because he comes back to where he was.
Right. Remember, it's not the nature of the arc, it's where they end up compared to where they start. That's why even a steadfast character grows. But he was growing out of his resolve. It was all of the attractions of adulthood, the money, the sex, the girl, the relationship, the toys, all of those things were luring him away from his normal 13-year-old life. And then he realized, oh, yeah, okay, no, I really still am 13. I'm not an adult. Right. Same type of thing as Devil Wears Prada, where she is lured into that world, but ultimately says, no, I'm gonna stay my original goal. I'm gonna continue to pursue that. Right.
So her friends were real assholes and not supportive of her career. I really had an issue with the teams in Devil Wears Prada.
Meryl Streep changes, absolutely. It's a Hannibal Lecter change where she does not like anybody or let anybody in close or even beyond compare. Nobody compares herself. And then she's saying, not only do you and I are just alike, but at the end, she says, this is the biggest disappointment, and if you don't hire her, you're an idiot.
Oh.
And then, and the proof is that when they run into each other on the street, and Meryl Streep sees that, oh, look how sharp she's dressing, and she feels really good. And then suddenly she realizes that the driver has noticing her smile and says, "Yeah, get going." So we see her. We see her privately as an influence character have that change, not publicly in the overall story.
She says, "I thought you didn't care." Don't
Right.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that would imply that Susan is a change character because the relationship between the main and influence characters are one who changes and one who makes mistakes. How do we see that Susan has changed?
Cold, business first person to a fun loving.
More importantly, something that's really much more tied to Josh. How does we know that she's adopted Josh's worldview?
I was waiting for that denouement at the end to see her do something very childlike, just on her own volition. But
No, remember the whole thing is that it's not acting like a child. That's not what the point is. The point is actually talking about the honesty and the openness and the emotional honesty. That's the thing that she couldn't understand. And even when, in honesty, straight up honesty, when he said, "I'm a 13-year-old child," and she couldn't understand it, and then she made the connection. She finally could see, oh, there's no double entendre here. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't some he's not trying to manipulate me. He's just saying exactly what it is, that he's a 13-year-old child inside of a 30-year-old body. And so at the end, when she's given the option to change as well, meaning to go back into that world physically, she doesn't need to, because she doesn't want to go through all the hassles of puberty and growing up in the pimples and all that kind of stuff. But she is much more, she is a completely different person at the end. She's not going to go back to John Hurd. He said, "Hey, keep my number, look me up in 10 years. And I'm 40 and you're 23. At least she didn't say 5 years. I mean, just borderline creepy. But anyway, but it's the ability to be completely honest and emotionally honest with Josh at the end, and that she knows herself. She doesn't want to go through that. And she would never say something like that to John Hurd, tell her what she really feels or what she really thinks. Prior, in the earliest part of the story. So I think that's sort of the part of the proof of the pudding, right?
you definitely get you get a sense that she's in a completely different emotional place.
Right, and that's
Well, she believes
what
him
it's about.
before he changes. Which I think relevant too. But she goes there and says, "This is true." And I believe you.
Because before he physically changes.
Before he physically changes.
Right, and
yeah.
that's really important to get the beats right on that.
Right.
And
Otherwise, then it's kind of like when you have a Forrest Gump moment where, his girlfriend goes, "Oh, okay, here, have the kid. I'm dying." And I knew about it for weeks. It's like, well, that's kind of crappy. So you came here to dump your baggage with me like you've done all through the story, and you're just doing it because you're going to leave me yet again. It's like, whereas if she had done it because she wanted to be with him and create the family, and then she found out she had cancer, that would be more tragic. But it would also be more satisfying because she would have actually changed. That's one of those things where you get the order of events really makes a difference in terms of the meaning.
Let's go back to his steadfastness.
Uh-huh.
So it's relevant that the first 5 minutes of the movie are showing him enjoying being a kid.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, I was totally just removing that in my head.
It's setting the status quo.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, literally, the beginning and they have those two same sequences.
Oh yeah.
You have a little bit leading up to the first sequence that they mirror at the end, but there's no accident that they show them doing exactly the same kind of thing, walking away from a camera, and with his bike, and with the stick ball, the stick.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that is really, and because the next, I think in the beginning, the next shot is the carnival, which is where his inequity sets up because he's too small, he's not big enough, which is why he decides he must be big, and then like, crap, I didn't really mean this big. I mean all of it. Okay, so main character approach, doer or beer. Is Josh a doer or a beer, and why? So does he prefer to change the world to conform to him, or does he change himself to conform to the world? He's a doer, why?
Well, when he becomes a grown up, he decides to first go into fix his city, but he finds his older person. But in order to fix his because his mom, so there's more than just because he's friends. And
He gets some money, he gets all the toys and stuff that he wants,
He plays with toys. That's what defines him, and that's why he's good for the company.
Also, he rebuilds his world.
I don't think it's the same kid because he still is a kid, right? We see him as an adult. He doesn't see himself as an adult. Okay, that sounds fine. That's good. Problem-solving style, linear or holistic, and examples. Is he male mental sex or female mental sex? Pretty
Probably
linear.
male intersex, but what comes to mind is he's playing with the building transformer and he's going, I don't get it. It's why is playing with a building fun? It's just very straightforward. It's just like, I'm a kid, I'm playing with it, I'm not having fun. There's a problem here. And everyone else is talking circles around numbers and marketing and all that. So that's one example I can think of.
Okay, I mean, even when he brings her into his home, as he says, there's the misunderstanding issue. She means one thing, he's interpreting it literally. But oh, come on, let's bounce, and he just sort of drags her up, and you got to jump, and so I mean, he just everything is cause effect, and I don't like this, I spit it out. It's cause effect without the inhibitors because of the age thing. Like again, that's to try to make him look like he's behave like he's a young person, but there's a real direct relationship to cause and effect there. I invented the shiniest, sparkliest suit because it this would look good. Not looking at how is this going to be holistically, or even once he gets the stingers and stuff, it doesn't react to that. It's not playing to that. So because it could make a mistake like that and then see how the response was and try to do something based on that, but it just right over his head. Okay, so linear. That was hard. Story driver, action or decision? Right, because he could have decided he wanted to be big, but that didn't change anything. The fact that he physically changed is what caused the problem.
My thing is that he couldn't get on the ride, forced him to make this. Right? I mean, isn't that the cause? It's not a big change in the movie, but
right. I mean, it's sort of leading up to. But I mean, what is it? What are the another actor? Well, that's not. When he's playing, he runs into the boss.
right.
That that collision of that event, essentially, we always think of, think of action in this instance less of an act, but a process of action as opposed to an event of action.
And the arrival of the list.
Right. Yes. The arrival of the list. That is absolutely an act change. And I'm sure it's an act change. I mean, you've got a complete past act for him around that time where he goes and starts visiting all the things that he used to do and all the people he's like, wow. Okay.
But obviously, tuning it back to a kid resolves the overall story.
Right. Yeah. All right. Time lock or option lock, and apart from the sort of phony time lock, I mean, so if there is an option lock, what are the options?
Well, go ahead. Well, no, I mean, when you're strictly talking about the story goal, which is undoing the wish, there's only a couple of beats toward that. It's okay, let's go to New York. Let's find the records, get that going, and then 40 minutes later, something else happens, and then we don't even see him going through the process of going through the list and figuring out, where Zoltar would be, which I don't understand how that information, how that data would look, but
Let's get the money to survive.
Yeah, because there are other sort of sub concerns. There's the goal, but there are other concerns along the way.
You have the requirements and
Right. But and then the concerns of the toy company, which again I would put under concern, not story goal, but but whatever that is. But then you're looking at, okay, how do we come up with a successful product line?
One that sort of, it's more
it is, except they don't play it. So that's the thing, is you have no idea exactly how much time is elapsed. With a time lock, it's like a timer. You really have to show a countdown. You have to show you're getting closer and closer and closer. Otherwise, it's not a limit.
Because it doesn't put pressure on the character. You don't show it, you don't feel it, I've only got one more week.
And see, if they had played the angle where there's a kidnapped boy, all right, the FBI's going to get involved, local law enforcement, who are the suspects? Who's this guy who came into her house? Where's this boy going all this time? This boy's getting school, he's going to New York. Where is he going, and who's he talking to? And like, if the story was pursued from that angle, then I think the options would be much clearer. Where is the boy? But that's not where the movie went.
Right. Well, they have to find find a place, someplace other than town to put it. They need to get a list of where those things are. They have to receive the list and then find out in the list where it is, and then you have to actually go to it, and then you make the wish. So, there is a little bit of time there. What they did is they sort of squeezed the getting the list to, they have to get the list to Billy, and then Billy has to get the list to Josh. And they kind of, they did show that there was...
And then Josh has to consider his options at that point.
Well, but that's a main character then.
Okay.
Not as protagonist, I mean, or whatever, player, not a role player. I mean, they kind of showed it was difficult. Billy was having a hard time actually getting that information to Josh. Mm-hmm. So ended up Billy just coming in, barging into his office, and saying, here it is. And, don't be such an asshole. So I think that they were having a lot of fun with the story, and was playing a lot in the subjective story, particularly in the main character. The overall story was there. It was just not as pressure cooker.
Chris, how did this one just wait a little bit?
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Outcome, success or failure, or what? How do we know?
success. He becomes a kid again.
Okay. Story judgment, good or bad. He's happy to be back. We also see she's happy. Everything's turned out. She's in a good place. There's, as I've mentioned before, I think not in this set of dynamics, but that there is probably a subjective world where you could see that there's sort of a success of judgment in the relationship. And you can easily see that this was in the relationship, it was good, but it was a failure. It was growing, but it didn't come to fruition because of
Even though she says, call me back in 10 years?
Yes, that's a different story. I mean, who knows where she'll be in 10 years or such. The relationship switched. It was in that last act, that last part, it switched from being romantic to a platonic relationship, to almost a parental relationship. But it's like very good. For this, it's very different. Okay, so now we look to the domains, and what we want to do is try to assign the 4 domains to the 4 through lines. So we have the overall story, main character, the relationship. Anybody care to pinpoint Josh, perhaps? The what?
In physics, overall stories in physics.
Oh, overall story and activity. Okay, and can you give some examples?
Because between boys on the boy program to older boy, it's feeling.
Okay, the question is he defined by the situation, or is the overall story defined by the time? Remember, we were looking at a boy, who's defined with an adult body. So is situation descriptive of the main character or of the overall story?
Most of the people that are here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. Okay, so
And again, if there's more focus on the mother and the father, completely dropped out of the picture. It would be, because there's a missing. Where was the?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We saw one cop car the whole time.
okay, so we're right now we're talking about whether or not the character and the overall story is an activity. Are they good with that? We should put the relationship down in psychology and manipulation.
I just have a question, because I feel like my initial thought was activity, but part of the issues that come out in the meetings is that he thinks differently. He thinks like a kid in an adult world, which seems like psychology.
Except what do we see that makes him a kid?
Just his behavior.
Right. It's
So-
more what he's doing.
Okay.
He's playing with it. Everybody else is around being very cerebral about it, and he's the one who's in there going up and watching it fall apart and break. And what's so fun about this? And what's so fun about that? You can see the big set pieces in the story are activities.
Mhm.
I mean,
The piano playing.
the piano playing, even the presentations, the dinner. So you've got sort of a lot of that, and the thing is that they populate that world with a lot of really stuck out people. And so I suspect that you might find that aspect of the story more in theme of character than you do in the overall
And
story.
the full sequence too before he gets the job. Going around, going.
And the gunfire outside, the threats are all seem to be physical.
John Lovitz says, "Slow down. What looks so fast? Making us aggressive."
Right. I mean, you see the psychology of manipulation. If it was about the other characters, but what they say and think doesn't really cause conflict, because that's sort of the status quo. He comes in and his activities disrupt sort of that world. I think that's
he's actually riding that scooter to the office.
right. I mean, him
Making
running
sense,
through the
right?
office. I mean, it's all these things of his physicality, these activities, that seems to cause conflict. Even the idea that, oh, I've kidnapped your son, so, I mean, it's a little bit of his main character situation thing that, I'll track you down and
And I guess I was looking for because like things like the piano for me aren't actually they're activity clearly, but they're not actually conflict. Like that's a fun conflict-free part of the movie, but having to come up with the comic book idea seems like
but we don't see them. It happens like this.
no, but to me that's
In one scene they don't have it. The next scene they have it. So there's absolutely it just happens. If it was a conceiving idea, then you'd be having a trouble coming up with an idea. You'd have all these people trying all these different things to find the right idea. There is no conflict in the concept, either the conceiving or the conceptualizing. He just sort of like, and even the tool, it's about what you do, and how much it costs, and all these very tangible issues, not the intangibles. Which is the reason I think it's so disruptive, because they're used to looking at at charts and statistics and all these things that are not they're in the psychology world, but this person has come in and forced them to actually back into the physical world, which is why it's so disruptive. I think if he wasn't in part of this, it would easily be a psychology story. Just looking at the characters as they sort of seem to be in that, where they're manipulating and what does he mean by that, or all these double entendres and ulterior motives, etc.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know. I got a lot of psychology and fixed attitude in the toy company environment. But again, we'll step back and say, what is Protagonist's goal? Well, it's tracking down the undoing the wish. All right. So the problem was created because they went up to this machine that happened to be unplugged or something, and made the wish.
No, it's not the wish. It's that you have a child in an adult's body. That's the problem. No, but see, that's the problem. So you have essentially this adult behaving like a child run amok in New York City, doing these things that are rather unexpected and inexplicable, and dropping water bombs on delivery people. I mean, those kinds of things are problematic. I mean, you have this well-established toy company that is run in a very bureaucratic way with all sorts of internal backstabbing and such, and then you introduce, this, physical tornado that comes in. They just don't know how to deal with it.
It's more like it's like the behavior being problematic as opposed to like society where we do really.
Right. No, his behaviors was forcing them to have to sort of come to grips with that. You see what the owner, it's kind of like, he kind of gets it. That's what the way he's old school. That's why he goes every Saturday and looks at the toys and sees what the kids are doing, doing his own research. And, what is Josh as the vice president of toy development, or whatever exactly his title was, he's in there playing with the toys. And, and based on what it does and how they work is what the recommendations he's making. It's not about any kind of he's like a one-person focus group. And he's disrupting sort of the status quo. I mean, that's why I would say that the conflict comes from what he does. Because you see a lot of these people that have this established history of manipulating stuff, but there's no conflict there. They all have their own. They all have their pecking order. It's all really well established. It's all history. Once he's there, it's what he's doing. The fact that he's doing something,
But then he
It's what
plays
shows-
with the building. Right.
Right.
That's your point.
well, he plays with the building as opposed to just looking at it as an abstract. It's like, no, this is a physical. This is a toy. You play with it. And it's almost like
Well, and they
foreign-
would say, oh, bugs, yeah, because bugs move around.
right, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is he is all about physical motion and action and activity with a group that is because of their their level in the company, they've sort of stratified themselves away from physical labor into this mental
very
world.
corporate.
Right, but that's before he gets there. That's the backstory. I think that's the key. That's the key is that what do you actually see? What conflict do you see in the story itself? And then when he says, "I don't get it," he's not challenging. That's the thing is he is not manipulating. Unlike what John Hurt tries to do, which completely just falls apart. But he's not trying to manipulate them. He's trying to say, well, no, I don't get what it does. This doesn't do anything. It's a building. What's fun about a building? It doesn't do anything. And that's why I think it does seem to, in fact, like you said, it's basically what would be an activity story. And you see in the psychology, the manipulation in the relationship is very clear. But she's constantly either trying to manipulate him or feeling like she's being manipulated. And he's 100% not manipulated at all. And she doesn't, she's attracted to it, but she doesn't understand it. Pardon? Not until the end. And then she understands it's like, oh, it's really simple. Oh, you are. How old are you? And she, oh, okay, that really kind of explains just about everything, And and she looks back on, she understands the value, the value of it, that age, but not all of the things that one has to go through and to get to the age that she currently is. It's like, no, she's like, no, thanks. I'll be happy with who I am right now, with my situation. So, overall story and activity, psychology and manipulation. All right, so within that, we want to look at the concerns. So we have a choice. We either have a concern that are past, understanding, memory, and developing a plan. In the upper left quadrant. So we've got progress, otherwise known as topic thinking. Doing, impulsive responses. Pre-conscious. Yes, pre-conscious. And playing a role or being. And then we have present, learning, gathering information. Anxious, consideration, contemplation, pleasure. Thank you. And conceiving an idea. And last one we have future, obtaining, conscious, innermost desire and fear. So the way it works is that we pick a quadrant, and that's, you only have to pick one, and you essentially pick all four. At this level, you pick one, you get all the others are going to be in the same place positionally. So anybody have a suggestion or two? Yes.
I'm just thinking the if you can visualize the role as finding as turning them back to defining those are turning back to the kid, that pretty much sounds like a thing.
Okay.
Then maybe make him concerned about his future, because he's turning into a man and he wants to be a kid again.
Also, being a man is his future.
And
It's a near future.
near future. And I mean, he's concerned.
Oh boy.
Mm.
How many shades of gray can we define in here? Yes.
49, 50.
And she's concerned about the getting those the desires that are growing inside of her in his regards, and that's affecting him as well, impacting him. And the concern in the relationship would be going from colleagues to romance romantic partners.
Or what, yeah, where are we? What is this? What are we becoming? Okay, that's a possible.
What's the difference between future and progress?
Future is, let me just define them separately and then we'll put the context of the main character. So future would be looking to where things will be. Progress is looking at how things are going. So are they getting better? Are they getting worse? It's a benchmark, that it's a way of looking at things not as an ending point, but as a process. I mean, it could be something that's going better, worse, but it's a process, not, right.
It's like, are things getting better or things getting worse? That's what it is.
Or vacillating, or stagnating. See, stagnating can be seen as getting worse or getting better, depending on what your frame of reference is. So but it's the idea that you're looking at things as they are progressing. The present would be his concern with his present situation, and he's going to have past, progress, present, and future explored over the course of the story. Every one of these are going to be explored. The question is, what is a primary concern to him throughout the story? That's a concern at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. So he seems to be concerned regarding his personal situation. That the situation is the sort of the defining portion of it. The main character means it's personal, and then which of those aspects. And yeah.
Can we do other suggestions?
Yes. That's why there are suggestions, not choices.
What about present for
Okay.
him? Because I think he's just all about the here and now, and whether he can get back to being a boy as soon as he can. As far as learning, because it seems like in the overall story, especially with the presentations and explaining them, there's a lot of like strategy and analysis and how you're supposed to create toys and develop toys, and his level of thinking is in a different area than what they're used to. Her contemplation, it's almost like she's doesn't even think about what it is she's doing. She's a very cynical adult that has an impact on. But the thing that I like the most is the conceiving in the relationship. Because there's this great scene, and that's just one instance of it, so it can possibly just be examples, but just the whole thing where she stops and she says, "What are we?" Like, what's going on? Like, something he's like, "Shut up," and like, there's something there. And I feel like he's holding back what it is that is really going on, what's going on with him, and it's the potential of a relationship is what's causing the problem. Whether or not there is something more that's feeling like
Remember, by that point, I think it's implied they've already slept together,
So, oh yeah,
Yeah.
heavily implied.
But
We don't see it, but
right,
Comes out
but,
that elevator door, like nobody's business.
right. And she's like, ah, 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 I mean,
right, but that's keeping them from coming together. Is she sees that there's something more than he does. But that's actually the sleeping together isn't the problem. Is that it's not an activity. It's the fact that he's not getting an idea that there's something.
isn't fitting.
Yeah.
No, I thought that scene basically said that he was quite aware that he doesn't. These are things he's not
But not
familiar
in the
with how to
same-
talk about it, and you just don't talk about these things. But she was saying, is there do we have a relationship, or how do you feel about me? And that's why he was like,
Oh,
gosh,
so I interpret
you silly. Of course, you can say it, but that's what that side look, and then like the grin, and then him sort of slapping her like, oh, duh. At least that's the way I interpret it.
Yeah, no, I guess I saw it more as he just wasn't getting the whole point.
Oh
That
no, I
scene
think
was-
I think he got it. I think he got it really early on. The scene right before they sleep, he doesn't. Or early on, he has no idea of it. But it's the second act, and that's when he did. That's when they start to do the dressing part.
I sort of thought the same thing when it was repeated until because they throw things at each other, but then they roll to the floor. I mean, he gets her to roll to the floor, so then sort of, oh yeah, he gets.
Well, I know,
but
but they're on a different level. Like he's just doing like a 13-year-old, and she's whatever, in her 30s or whatever. So he doesn't have the same idea of what a relationship is as she does. It's a completely different thing. So it's like they're not giving the same. They're not working towards the same thing. That was my interpretation. Because I mean, he's on like a teenager level, and she's on a completely different level. So it's just
Right,
like,
but,
what is
but
going
I
on?
think she's developing. Her relationships have been they haven't been like a teenager, and she's actually I think coming toward him, which is why she doesn't understand where she is. She's in uncharted territory. I'm not saying that I'm not disagreeing with you. But I'm just saying that at least the way I read it was that she doesn't know how to what this is, because this is probably one of the first times she's had a real romantic relationship that was not a stepping stone in her career, as was enumerated by her recent ex. And that's why she doesn't know what are we doing here, because if it's not a career thing, and she's so far away from just having a crush or having that puppy love or a bit more, that I think that's why she's floundering. She's just sort of like, is this work related or not, or what are we doing here?
One of the things I think find really interesting is that he doesn't seem particularly concerned. Maybe because Billy is a protagonist, but Josh himself doesn't seem particularly concerned with the future. He really does seem more concerned with getting through today.
No. The future, the argument for the future, his future came too early.
That's what I
His,
mean. That's the
his
argument.
future
that I'm making.
arrived way too early, and he's not ready for it. That's where I would. That's if we went with future. That's how I would define it.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. That he is in his future already.
it makes more that in the OS I see, I seem to see more of them like they're trying to obtain the sales, trying to obtain money, trying to obtain promotions, trying to obtain better jobs, like the right
Trying
guy,
or getting it, the office.
getting
Getting
up
a corner
up the
office.
corporate ladder, and then trying to I feel trying to obtain like the location of the local.
And see, I see the whole problem is when Loja's like, hey, let's bring this guy in and see what he can teach us. But that's
But doesn't that happen later?
That's the second act.
Straight after the piano.
Yeah.
Right after the piano, right? But that's already into
Yeah.
Because
is
they
that-
move to the city, and then in the city they have to go through the process. It's probably like the threshold.
Yeah, and the
Well,
goal
it's
is
like maybe it's a half closer.
Isn't that about midpoint? And he gets the promotion. Yeah, so it's the beginning of it for that. Well, let's look at okay. Do we have any other suggestions for the other two? So just want to make
I think progress playing a role in impulsive responses is yeah. Because I think in their relationship, it's marked by him trying to not play a role and eventually punch forward. I think in the overall story, what they're doing at work seems to be increasing. You know, suddenly at the end, it's like, oh no, we have to come up with a whole new plan. His progress seems to mark his journey.
I mean, I can make an argument for past understanding. Trying to restore his past, and a lot of what we saw at the toy company, I think, fall under understanding. It's the whole point of the toy company is they've lost their understanding of what kids do and what they like and what they respond to. So he comes in and brings a whole new understanding, and that's mainly exemplified through the head of the company. And for her, for memories, she has all this experience that has made her kind of jaded, and she's had these experiences with men who won't commit and blah blah blah, and that all comes up, and of course developing a plan, conceptualizing, and she's trying to make it work, and I like some of the themes underneath that, but I also like some of the themes under the other quadrants too. I mean, they really hit a lot of points.
I find it playing a role was really well in the relationship with benchmarks, because there's this first moment where you're right before you kiss the first time, but he's saying there's something I should tell you, and he doesn't say anything, right? He decides to play the role, and then again later he says, there's something I really need to tell you, and then that time around he says it. And her, I find that in their relationship in the beginning, she'd be a corporate woman, or like trying to tease him and trying to seduce him, and then he kind of gives in and stops playing the role and opens it to him. But I don't know, feels strong, not really strong.
As a benchmark.
Yeah. Okay, well we have a bit of a stalemate.
Yeah.
So let me just hear one last sort of argument for our main character concern of the future and main character concern for the present.
My argument for him in the future is that everything he has to deal with is what he would have to deal with. Finding a place, finding a relationship, earning money, dealing with living in the city, dealing with living alone. Those are all things as a kid you never have to deal with, but as an adult, and that's
How concerned is he about that?
I don't think
So
he likes.
here's where I think it falls apart. And it falls apart for me in the present as well, because he certainly doesn't seem to be worried about money. He doesn't. I mean, he's like surprised he even gets paid. And then when he gets it, he spends it all. There's just anything concerned about now. He seems to be really okay with right now. The one thing to me about the future is that, to me, is the personal side, is his conversations with his mother. He's going to be coming home. It will be fine, and he keeps on having to sort of project this thing in the future is going to happen, because it's the closest thing to personal conflict we're seeing with him, shy of what's growing in his relationship, and in the bigger picture, what's going on with Billy. Because he's very devil may care. When it comes to right now, he doesn't seem to, except the first act where it's all new. But once that's over, it's kind of like, he's got money. It takes one scene for him to get used to and he gets the scene at his first night, goes to work, he get a paycheck, he comes back, he's got his TV blasted, he turns it off, and there's just as much screaming and gunshots outside, and he's just sitting there eating an apple. So his present situation at that point seems to be fine. You know, he does. That's the one thing about him is he is, which I think is what bedevils everybody else in the company, is that he doesn't seem to have a care in the world, which is sort of that top quality, except when it comes to his mom. And when he's returning to being a kid, yes, you know, I'm just like, he writes as Josh, you know, it's almost like camp, you know, I'll be seeing you soon. That's the only time you ever really see where there's this, to me, where there's sort of a discrepancy there, apart from him just wanting to go back. But he slowly loses that future. It becomes less and less and less of a concern as he sort of comes closer to the middle before he eventually goes, oh, no, I'm going to go. You know, because then you have the act that explores his past and he gets all the reminders of all the things that he would normally be doing right now, like a class picture and playing baseball and all those things.
And isn't the future just one signpost? It's not there.
Well, he contacts his mother about once an act.
That's it twice. The phone call.
Yeah.
No, he goes in when he first changes.
Yeah.
He calls her and then he writes her.
What attracts me to the past for the main characters is the fate, destiny, interdiction, and conviction.
You mean for the main character?
For the main character concern, yeah, because because that machine, you know, just kind of is there magically, and it's not even plugged in, you know, and that's you know, so it's almost like this is fate, this is destiny. That's where I'm kind of attracted because there's something magical going on,
There's absolutely no discussion of fate or destiny, or there's really not even part of the conversation as far as I don't know.
it's just visually represented. I mean, it's implied. It's just implicit in the that there is something magical going on.
Or should we try to make another argument? Or not a boardroom. We're
going to go all four, okay.
No, I don't know.
We don't have to. No. If you have conviction behind it, yes. If you're just trying to add another option, then no. So if you think it's a viable option, then yes. But if you just think, well, okay, I want to throw this in the mix, then I'd rather not. Right now, we have 3 out of 4.
While he's thinking about that, while he's thinking about that, my argument for benchmark is not possible. It's what we've already decided. It can't be doing part of
The benchmark can't be, or the concern can't be.
the benchmark.
Cannot be.
Weird.
Even if you leave the concern unselected.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that I could try to argue that before the right wasn't, except maybe for doing less and extra, could see it as still hungry. But I could see in both of the responses in her and that what she has is she reacts impulsively towards him and she can't control that. It's going to go it's almost against her will. So attracted to him and react in a specific way, then her impulses. You want to go
careful. You're using impulsive there, like you would subconscious, not pre-conscious.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just your your use of the definitions as much more like subconscious. Right. Remember, pre-conscious has much more to do with filters.
Yes.
And that's the easiest way to think of it, is filters. You know, either the filters building up or being plugged out. So
her filter is kind of being calmed down because she's been kind of working on it. playing a role feels pretty big in their relationship that I could see. How things the same. The thing with him is that with his personal feelings, I feel like he doesn't feel that concerned about much, right?
Right.
So that's why I feel like that's probably like some of the weakest, maybe lightest story points.
Yeah, the only place we see him being concerned is when it comes to his mom. And letting her know that he's okay and that he will be back. You know, which is really strong at the beginning and weakens over time. Which is, you know, when you have a steadfast character, you can either have a steadfast character that makes a weak choice and then needs to strengthen it over time, or like in this case, he made a very definitive choice right after he was big. He went boom right back to change it to small, and it couldn't happen. So what we see over the course of time is it erode, so that he almost succumbs and then gets that wake up call and goes, nope, I'm going back to stay the plan that I had from the beginning.
Yeah, he's just sort of I feel like the point in the movie, if you look at it from without the lens of Dramatica, it's really about having the adult audience remember what it's like to experience things. Does that seem generally fair to people? And that seems to me like a learning kind of story and the overall story. And even when his buddy finds Zoltan, the movie's not actually over because the goal was reached. Tom Hanks actually has to realize he is not enjoying the experience, or that he misses the experience of being a kid before he actually gets in the cab and goes out.
But ultimately, he actually has to have his wish granted.
Yes.
That's what pretty much closes the deal.
And then how is it anything but a deal? If that's the thing that closes the deal.
Yeah.
Because my point is that you're right, but is that a driver, or is that actually part of the concern?
Part of the
story.
Part of what?
The meaning of the story is just obtained.
No, the meaning of the story is an attitude, approach, and what they just go around.
Yeah, I do. I think it's at the genre level. I think that's why we're having a hard time subdividing, because it really is at the higher one, which is where it usually is not.
The higher one or the lower one?
Well, it certainly is at the higher one. And then I'm sure you probably could go into the thematics. I mean, to me, if you look at the thematics, self-interest, attitude, approach, morality, that's where you see those people.
Yeah.
At the corporate. That's where the attitude thing is. That's where the self-interest and morality thing is.
Yeah, I want the corner office. Right. Yeah, but that's definitely someone's attitude. That's definitely self-interest.
I think the pair would be approach versus attitude. Because again, you're thinking about
his approach is the thing that just flabbergasts everybody. He just goes in and he plays with it. And it clashes with the attitude that you have of all these executives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's why
it clashes with their approach and it causes attitudes.
Right, their approach is use statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And he's pretty much without an attitude at all, which also is very confusing.
I do like that for the overall, and I like innermost desires for her personally. I think that's, I definitely see an argument for contemplations. I think it just feels more subconscious work. How she's driven,
and look at the conversation the two of them have at the end. Particularly, but I mean, the changing one's nature. That's sort of the whole relationship thing. It's like, I mean, at the very end, they do go through this change from being sort of romantic into a parent-child thing. And she says, don't want to go back and be that age and be in a relationship with you as a 13-year-old and stuff, because I don't want to go through all that again. I know it, it's like that's not a change I want to go through. And you're just at the beginning of it, and you don't know what you're really asking yourself to get into, because the world is you. That's right. You haven't experienced this yet.
Right.
So I mean, that's what puts it sort of like the brakes on that becoming between them, because she's experienced and he's not, and that will always be there. Even if she goes back and she's now 13, she's going to have a much more life experience than he is, and then she will never be a 13-year-old mentally again, and he can't be an adult, which is what he was telling her, but she wasn't really listening. Right, changing the nature, which is why it doesn't happen. She's not willing to change. She doesn't think she can change back to being a 13-year-old. She's not willing to. And he's not willing to move forward and skip all of his youth. And I think in the overall story of obtaining, look at all the stuff he gets. And I mean, it's like he's just constantly buying stuff, and it's like, and loss. That's you have the mother bit in there too, but it's he's just waiting to get that wish again. He's trying to all of the things that everybody else is concerned with obtaining, he is not, which is why they don't understand it. He didn't even realize he was getting paid for the job, how much he was getting paid. Crazy! $93.30. You're not happy, John.
No, but I'll let it go. It just seems less sophisticated.
Yes, I think it is.
It is less sophisticated.
But yeah,
I think it's a less sophisticated.
I think Mike's whole thing about the experience of being not that about the experience of being a child, and like when you're an adult, just the kind of reductive thinking that you undergo, where they just rely on statistics and they just rely on charts and they just rely on this stuff to kind of propel that decision making. And then here comes this kid who just has like a childlike innocence and is completely sure of himself, doesn't rely on any of this other stuff. I feel like that's more what the film is about than isn't that just the wish. Isn't that his approach?
Well, logic feeling. I see.
The reason
I would go with logic feeling on that one.
See, here's the reason I don't think it's so much learning.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't see them learn anything. What you see is the learning. You see the lessons. You don't see them learning. I mean, the John Hurt character does not learn anything. He is no wiser about how this process works. He just wants to try to, turn it around on him. And of course, because he doesn't understand it, it's just like.
And the other characters, John Lovitz doesn't learn anything.
No, they're all worried about losing something. They're all, we lost the, this person got something that I didn't get. You got the corner. You got some Bob's office that's bigger than mine.
That's all right, that's fine.
No, I know it's one line, but I think that you find them all over the place. And, well, I mean, let's try.
Yes.
Yeah. Pardon? Can you turn this
set it up for you?
Yes. So
it's just super easy. All you gotta do.
And I need to hook it up to the mic on. Pardon? Open up. What do you got here?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think the movie hits a lot of points. I mean, I think it was a really tight script, and I think it's very well developed. And I think it's we're having a hard time because so many of these points, so many of these thematic explorations are hit that when the movie is very sophisticated, you have that problem when there's either not enough to go on or there's a whole lot to go on. And you can't settle on which one is the centerpiece. And that's what I think is going on here, is because there are really good arguments, I think, for each quadrant and for the themes underneath those quadrants.
It's just sharing.
I think it's
Okay, great. So it's going to adjust, I think, once I push this in now. Am I going to break? Is it going to?
Probably not. Let's see.
Well, I don't want it to lose it.
Well, we'll just do the same thing before. Or,
Did that work
yeah.
okay?
yeah, I did. I said no.
Okay. And can we check to see, make sure we're okay?
Go back to Chrome. Yeah, it's good. It's just now it's blown up.
Okay,
That's good.
it's blown up.
Yeah, it's like
Oh, right. Yeah, I'll correct for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
dramatic.
just gotta find that little tiny. Oh, there. Where is it? Ah, there. Thank you. And all right, I think. Yep, we've got them all there now. So let me just. May I
It's yours.
where
Go
you
for it.
are?
Or you can sit here.
Yeah, just because I don't want to turn anything too much, and I want to put on the projector.
So everybody else can see. What?
All right, I'll make it the choices you want. Oh, please.
I get okay.
All right.
Well, my tiebreaker is looking at which quadrant, look at you have the motivation quadrant, you have the methodology, you have the purpose, and you have the evaluation. And to me,
You're not supposed to use it.
Huh?
Yeah. What he's saying, you're not supposed to use it.
Why
yeah,
isn't
but
this
what?
working?
Sometimes it'll help break the tie. And
No,
it's like okay, like what was the Tom Cruise movie? Live,
Therapy.
Edge of Tomorrow.
It's not how we solve that, is it?
No, but I thought about it later, and I thought, when I was thinking about that level, because Jim really wanted it to be in the present learning, conceiving, and we went with that. When I thought back to it, it's like, yeah, because if you think about those four terms, motivation, purpose, methodology, the movie is so much about methodology. It's like the plot is so about how do we do things, that, and I, and I was. And so I when I thought about it, that sort of reinforced that we made the right choice. But here, I really feel like this is strongly about motivations, about how you see it in the first act when it's so strongly established what Josh's motivation is. It's like girl motivation, ride motivation, and then you go through and you see what the motivations are for the corporate people. You see motivations, for the girl. I don't feel like that this is about methodology.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about how to do things. It's about
about the choice.
what's moving you.
Quiet. Bitter party one. What?
He abandoned me a long time ago. He was there. He was like, I'm going to look bad if
What am I missing?
See that?
Okay, so if we make this obtaining the overall story bench overall concern, the benchmark is then understanding in the overall story. I don't understand. Might be part of that.
Well, I think it makes sense that the past would be his main character benchmark.
And if we go down to the element level of the overall story, we have, okay, now we haven't chosen, you were saying it should either be attitude or approach.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's that pair.
Does that pair seem good to most of you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think we see self-interest and morality, but it's not it's kind of like a byproduct. It's not really what is explored explicitly.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, actually, I think, if you think of it, when you choose one as the point and the thematic point and the other as a counterpoint, the dynamic opposite, the other two become the measures. So we are evaluating approach based on self-interest or morality, and I think you see that very clearly, because that we sort of judge approach or judge attitude based on self-interest and morality. So we have consider, and under approach, we have consider, logic, feeling, reconsider. And attitude, we have support, help, hinder, and oppose. For our main character, this would be what? Openness or preconception, I guess. And we have consider, reconsider, faith, disbelief, or control, uncontrolled, help, hinder. Do any of these things jump out at anybody?
Uncontrolled.
Well, is it-
Oh, this okay. Choice can be the issue as well. Actually, that sounds pretty good to me. Okay, so the issue could either be
Issue can be any of them right now.
yeah.
Well, okay.
I mean, the quad.
I mean, to me, this one looks really. This quad looks fairly decent.
Here's the thing: I like conscience and temptation because, again, temptation is kind of the dark side of whatever that means in this movie, and even though it's only, I do feel like that there is this tug toward, pursuing the adult life, which is the wrong path for him, and there's conscience in the represented by Billy, represented to a certain extent by the president of the company, and I definitely see logic feeling, because I think that maybe is where he is impactful to everyone else as a steadfast character, is under logic and feeling.
Is preconception an option too?
Yes.
Just because that uncontrolled feels so strong for him.
True.
Right.
It gets him into so much trouble, and maybe help too, in the sense that he's actually, he's making good faith that there's very, very naive attempts at helping. Like, he wants to, he's like, why, this doesn't work, we should do this, we should do that, when he's going through the store. And even with her, like, you should have fun, just do that, just come and jump. It's like, it's trying to move things along in a very naive way, which could be some kind of like help hinder. But uncontrolled feels so strong. Like, he's really but again, his personal concern is so. I feel his concern is. I mean, his personal angst is so underplayed, I find, in the movie.
Yes.
That it's
Except
hard.
the first act.
Yeah.
After that, well, it's a different kind of. The thing is what happens is you have him growing into him really. It's a game for him, and you see them losing sight of his playfulness and his childishness or childlike qualities, or child qualities, not even childlike, child qualities. Sort of the, work is more important than anything else. Obviously, that's where it brought it up to where, Billy comes in and says, "You asshole," do whatever you want, and then leaves. But it steps up to that, because you've got him leaving Billy after the birthday party to go meet with Susan. So he has, I have a previous engagement. It's like, what? I'm your best friend, It's like, so you can see that's slowly moving away from his past life to his future, potentially. And but sort of skipping all the good bits in between. So the thing is that if we have it, if it's controlled, uncontrolled, so then that puts it in self-interest.
Yeah.
And I don't think that really, I don't really think that's a
Well, if control, if uncontrolled is his, since he's a steadfast character, if we're looking at control, uncontrol, and then That could be his problem solution. Help hinder could be the symptom response, if that makes sense. And then symptom response would be under attitude for the overall story, meaning the support imposed would be the problem solution. And what
Which
comes
kind of works well. Support.
I mean, can we make an argument for either support or oppose as the problem
For him or for the overall
for the overall story?
Well, in the corporation, I guess, in the way they think in the government, so it sounds like.
Well, support is the problem.
Yeah, because they support the way things are being.
Right, because they're supporting even though they don't believe it. You know, they're supporting just essentially to kiss ass, kissing up. You know, just they're showing the support where they may in fact be backstabbing them.
Hope it gets symptom. So this
Which would make, if we went that way, that makes the main character problem control. All right, which, you know,
I mean, it would have made sense that they wrote it, but it's like the intent is.
Right. I don't see that. Well, the actual I think I could easily see his problem as being control. You know, the whole thing is he wants control of his life, and so he figures that if I get big, then I can be in control of what I can do and what I can't do. And so as a motivator, that makes sense. But it's really kind of I just don't think that, as you say, I don't think that was the intent. You can read it that way, but I don't like it. Now let me try one thing. Hold on, 1 sec.
All right.
Let me let's go back to the story engine.
Let's do it, James.
Let's look at the signposts.
Can we just take reduction and production and just jam that into the?
The main character, Act 3. Act 3 seemed to be the past, didn't it?
Well, where is it?
Was that Act 3 or 4? I think it was. Well, it was before he got the list.
Right.
Like
yeah.
four-
It was
Yeah,
before
yeah,
he got the
before he gets the
list.
list.
So I think it is.
So because he gets the list and then he
doesn't open.
What?
So it's not in the last act.
No, it might be that he
back.
gets. I think he gets the list,
He gets
and
then he
then
goes back to his school.
but it's
and
before-
sees where he's-
it's before his buddy
Yeah.
shows up and says,
No,
Same
because
point.
right after he gets the list from he, meaning Josh, gets the list.
Yes, and then he goes back.
No, Josh gets the list from Billy while he is setting up for that meeting, and then he goes directly from there to that meeting.
"No, he only gets
Directly
he
from
only gets
meeting
the
to
one
the-
name when he's preparing for the meeting."
Huh?
Billy gets the list before,
Yeah, but I'm not talking about what Billy
and
gets.
then Josh gets one name. So it's not even a list. It's here it is.
Right, and that's the beginning of Act 4, isn't it?
Yeah. So he has already been back to his neighborhood.
Yeah, because he does it before he has the showdown with his girlfriend.
He heads directly there.
You're right.
Remember?
Yeah, and
He-
that's
he
why
goes-
he tells her he misses his family.
Right, that's Act 4. That's in Act 4.
Okay.
Because he's already seen the family, he's seen the picture taking, he's seen that.
I think it's also fair to say that signpost 2 is probably progress, which just came up. So good.
Yeah, the presence dealing with this already.
What is control?
It's not on the screen, right? Oh, control is on the bottom level. Under
And I think if I nope, okay, so that does, we still have a lot of flexibility if I change that. If we have, that's interesting.
Well, it takes away an approach as a possibility. If you use signpost 3 as the past.
where's the main character issue? You
Attitude.
get attitude at least. With a catalyst of approach. So
The
that
problem
might put-
of hinder or oppose, the main character problem of avoidance or uncontrolled. There's your uncontrolled
Right.
that you were looking for.
Hmm.
Symptom of hinder or oppose, response, help, or support. Hmm?
It's under delay. Delay.
What?
I'm just if we go with avoidance, that's under delay versus choice, and then could delay be a thematic thing for him?
So it's delay or preconception.
Well, delay. I mean, he doesn't really delay. He only does it. Well, he only questions.
I think delay.
Going back once. It's not really not delay.
Well, delay
It's been
has
delayed.
having to do putting off
Yeah.
making a decision, essentially, or putting
Yeah.
off not.
Delay would be more his unique ability. It's his delaying his.
Remember, his unique ability is what allows the main character to have this overall story end in success.
Yeah, and it's delaying staying in
No. His openness to
To acknowledge the fact
The-
that he's a child.
what it means to be a child, as opposed to, remember, the reason he got into it is that he thought, I need to be big. And then,
No, I don't.
well, and then he gets to see he really is open, and he does get to see what it's like to be an adult, but realizes it's what he's missing. That's sort of why they have that Act 3 of going back and looking at all the things he's missing. The pictures, the class pictures, the games, family.
I think critical flaw of self-interest helps too, because he's sticking around for himself and ignoring Billy, right? And that's why it's called an a-hole.
And the delay, this is going to take 6 months, or it's going to take 6 weeks, or whatever. That's what slows the overall story down.
Well, how are you?
Loosely is that.
Oh, wait.
And a catalyst of approach is really good too, because it's
Right. That's the thing that
that's what causes
creates
all the
more
problems in the story.
conflict. Right.
Well, okay, relationship story, relationship issue, obligation with a catalyst of rationalization. Rationalization is what would increase the sparks, would increase sort of the, raise the level of the argument between them, right? Because
The catalyst. Yeah. Right.
Excuses. She thinks he's making excuses, and that's that raises her danger.
So the problem between them is either feeling or reconsider.
What's the response?
So the symptom would be either hinder or oppose, or help or support. Well, in their relationship, it seems to be more of a help as the treatment, because remember, that's sort of why. Well, I can do the market analyses, and I can do this stuff, and because it's sort of like, I can't do this kind of stuff. I can't do this. It's like, no, I can help you with that part of it.
But would the symptom hinder then?
Well, it would be this. The symptom would be hinder. I don't like those. So if we put the concern we said was future. Symptom, disbelief, hinder, oppose, temptation. I don't know. I think we're spinning our wheels here. Yes.
I just locked down critical flaw of self-interest. It puts him into preconception. I think is that about mostly that. I mean, I can sort of see that as being like, oh, what is it like to be an adult? He has a preconception of that world, but I'm kind of ignoring that. But it puts his problem in uncontrolled, which is nice because he's
You've answered something more than I have.
Here.
Oh, you have an issue, an influence character issue.
Oh, I do. That was unintentional, but
Which one is it?
Hope versus a denial, and you had it as what?
denial.
Courage to deny.
Yeah. I think I was just experimenting and then forgot to undo it, but I like that his. I really can't see a symptom of hinder.
With him? Well, I mean,
Is it simply that he-
there's when you can't go.
Is it
right.
simply that
Well,
The relationship,
right. and you also just can't? Well, that's
in Act 1, there's a bunch of hindering happening to him personally. After that, I see it.
well, let's look at the overall story. I mean, you've got you certainly see help as a response a lot. I mean, because that's essentially the in the meeting where he's saying, this doesn't work. He really is trying to help. He's really trying to help because it's like he's giving very concrete reasons why this is not working, and in fact comes up with a better suggestion for something that would. But he's resistant to raising his hand and such because he feels like he might be, messing things up.
I think they see his opposition to their
As
they
hindering,
work.
yeah.
as the problem. So that would be the symptom.
Or that would actually be the real problem. You've got oppose as the problem.
No, I know. I'm saying I would maybe see it the other way around. Where hinders the problem. Opposes. Because everyone's trying to undercut each other in that office.
But they're not doing it. See, the thing is, they're not doing it directly. They are driven to oppose everybody else's thing, and then he comes in and basically turns it into something where he's really helping.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's really.
And it's also much more direct because doesn't the jerk complain like he's going right after me? He's ruthless. That's much more like help in a negative sense than.
Well, he's seeing it as a problem as a hinder. Yeah, because he's going out. He's making my life difficult. He's blocking me.
I think, by the way, when I put in her issue of denial,
Mm-hmm.
it's that she's on the wrong path as an adult. But at the beginning, at least, she sees it as the right path. So she's in denial that the path she's on is wrong. It's not the way to get towards happiness, and she learns through him ultimately to change course.
Right. Well, and if you look at it, it's, the idea of denial is that, the belief that that previously held view is no longer true. And I think that's very, very true for her. I mean, in terms of what she's dealing with, she's seeing, her way of seeing the world has now been really challenged and she doesn't know how to deal with it, which is what you see the scenes where she's asking him, that's the sort of the what are we about? It's she just doesn't know how to deal with
Well,
it.
it's interesting. The critical flaw is commitment, and that could be that her argument toward him is undercut when she talks about commitment or trying to define what is our commitment. It's not about pro-commitment or anti-commitment. It's about raising the question of commitment that kind of undercuts her impact on him.
And I think for her unique ability of closure, she could probably make it so that his option is closed to him of going back. She could influence him enough to stay.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
in fact, they
Yeah.
hint at that at the midpoint of the movie.
Right.
Well, they
And
hint at it later on too. I mean,
Well, at the
midpoint
end, he
movie, they
says the
walk
only
past
reason
the
I'd stay
machine.
there is
Is for you.
yeah.
oh yeah, but
What about
also, you can also deny him in terms of direct impact onto him because it'd be case, like, getting him to maybe deny his own nature as a kid if he decides to pursue her.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I liked in the relationship the problem of feeling. I actually do like that. I mean, because that's what's driving it. Ultimately, they don't change. You know, they've got this really strong feelings for one another. You know, that develop.
No.
And then ultimately,
I think the problem is that the feelings are like weird. Yeah, because it's just like, yes, there's a feeling that there are these feelings, but they're like strangely inappropriate.
Right, and it does resolve out though, as the logic is that I
have to get back to my family.
Yeah, and I can't go back and be a 13-year-old again.
Right.
You know, and so they can amicably resolve the relationship. It just means that they're not together, but the relationship isn't you know, terrible. It's not broken. It's just it's resolved. There's no more. The attraction is kind of gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and isn't hope sort of if things continue down this path, that's as an inhibitor. Once they've realized, well, he knows he's 13 and she's older. Like continuing down this path is going to ruin the relationship because, like you were saying earlier, they're
right. You can come. You know, you have the option here. You can, you know, but she's like, no. I could, and I don't want to go that way. It's within my capability. It's not a dream. It's because at the end they pretty much have blasted away all the rationalizations, though. You know, there's no more excuses. So that catalyst that brings them up to the end, and ultimately they do resolve it, but it just by resolving it, the drive is gone, as opposed to resolving it or leaving the passion there. So that's why I think in the relationship through line, the dynamics I believe are different. They're not structural dynamics. They're like a dynamic, but it would be structural in nature as opposed to dynamic in nature. So that's where you get things like love and hate and all that kind of stuff. Right.
So this puts the signpost 4 of his into the future. Is it that he gets back onto his future?
Sees his mother and
well, look at, I mean,
doesn't seem right.
Well, his future is being a 14-year-old and living out his childhood. That's in the context of this story. That is his future.
Well, I mean,
He's accepting his actual future as the future that he should have.
Well, I mean, but
and they also call me in 10 years. You know, so.
Well, that's the story is more or less over by that point. His through line is he just has to resolve, but it's already he's changed at that, or he's made the choice to stay the course at that point, and she's changed. But I mean, to me, the future. This is the warning. Why it's it's the area of here's where his future is going to be. He's going to become just like all the rest of them, which is what Billy is sort of pointing out. You asshole! You're just going to be essentially. He doesn't return the calls. He doesn't have time for his best friend. He's now the future is that he's going to be this. He's an adult. He's no longer a 13-year-old. He's going to become this adult, even though he doesn't have the years. Yeah. And that's sort of why it's the troubling nature of it. And because that way you look at the first for the main character signpost 1, the present. First thing they're worried about, get a place to stay, No.
The signpost 1 for the main character is he's just living life.
Right, but I know, but for him, he's got to find a place a good place to stay. It's raining out?
No, that puddle's been up there for the whole thing. I thought it was a stain, but it just went.
Oh. Okay. What we happen to have?
Oh, you built it.
Our built-in solution right here. And of course, it's stop.
Thank you, Paul. All right. That a little bit of excitement for my next deck. So this first, if you think of one way of looking at signposts are It's like the concern of the moment. So the first thing it's concerned about is the here and now. Getting some money, getting a place to stay, getting a place to eat, and getting things started to try to find.
I think it's even earlier than that, though. It's the girl, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
it's,
it?
Yeah,
it's
no, it
a
is.
roller coaster. It's
And the roller coaster, the sign's too
it's trying to
small.
impress
And being
the
too
girl.
small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But I mean, really, isn't the story? The story really starts when he turns large.
right, and so it builds into that, but that transitions into the how things are going. Okay, let's find a job. Let's look at the job listings. Let's try to find that job, and then things are going actually pretty well, and he's making more money, and then he's making more money, and so you definitely see that section as being about progress, how things are going. But for quite a ways into the second act. Meanwhile, the signpost one of understanding, if the first signpost, if the inciting incident is he changes into an adult, obviously there's the understanding of what's going on is a severe issue. You've got to understand I'm your son, and she won't. And right. That clearly belongs there, is the understanding concern. And then of course, gathering information, finding the list. Getting the information about the where the carnivals are, and then learning about how to get along in New York.
By experiencing adult life for the first time. And stuff.
Yeah,
and getting the job and learning.
That's the only part of the second act.
Well,
Yeah.
Talking about his experience on his resume.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, learning the ropes, so to speak,
Yeah.
and then transitioning to doing. So it's like now he's put in charge of the development. By he's got the new job.
And when she first shows up, she shows up saying, barging into the guy's office and saying something about, this guy is, or this, why is this woman is a no good employee or something like that,
Right.
So she's coming in, barging, you got to think about this, you got to contemplate this, but then, but also, when she bumps into him later on in the, in the corridor or out in the cubicle area, he's contemplating her bra, her cleavage, So
I think that's a stretch.
Yeah,
I think it's more of the when you see her with John Hurd, and they're thinking about, so what's the latest and all this, they're doing sort of their planning and just the memory thing. I think is fairly light. I'm not sure I understand that as signpost too.
So maybe they touch upon it.
Right, but that's
later.
Yeah, she said, I can't believe you even brought up so and so.
That's later.
right. Yeah, I mean, but that doesn't have any. That
Signpost 2 can extend well into the late second act.
She doesn't even come in.
Or-
is
Or actually, no. All right. Here's how I would think you probably might get it in there when he brings her home, and it's almost like, well, don't you remember how to do this, and don't you remember how to do this, and don't you remember how to do that? Remember,
Yeah.
she's the one who changes. Remember, so she's the influence character, but she's the one who's being ultimately influenced,
Right.
and so
And right after that, her impulsive response is she's playing with the radio. And he's like, her boyfriend's like, can you stop
Yeah,
fussing and
yeah.
everything?
Yeah, and also she doesn't know how to deal with him.
Right. Oh, I can't believe you're just like all the other guys.
And then ultimately, it's that down to her subconscious, her real, where her heart is, and that's when she's all and that's when she's most insecure. And then she still thinks it's about something else, but finally kind of puts it all together, and doesn't want to lose him, but then you have the relationship is sort of the last part of that act.
Well,
Yeah.
we're changing the nature of the relationship.
Right.
Very clearly.
And the nature of the relationship from a romantic relationship to a I don't want to say, it's not a mother-son thing. It's it's non-sexual.
Yeah.
So,
It's affectionate, but not
right,
sexual.
right.
At the beginning, it really, I mean, they don't really interact until the party. And from that point on, it's pretty much.
Right, and my
flirtatious
guess
and
is that it's very possible
romantic.
that for the first act, Billy may be acting an acting influence character. I don't know. Or it may just be mostly just overall story and main character. Yeah, because we don't really see her in there much.
When they bump into each other.
It's this. No, it's the first when he first gets the job. Maybe he's interviewing, and she comes in, right?
Yeah.
You said bump in.
Well, that's when they first are
The
introduced.
first
right?
encounter is when she barges in, and then
But
later
they literally bang into
he
each other.
bumps into the guy, and
And he bumps into the three of them,
Oh, yeah.
into the boss and
Right. That's what I thought you meant.
John Hurd.
Bumping in.
You know where Billy could be
So that's
in
what
the
he puts it down.
relationship there is it's how is this going to work? I'll come visit you, and this and this. He's conceiving ideas. Of how this
Yeah,
is
I mean, I think that he pretty much sort of fills that little bit of void there for a while, but very quickly. I mean, for the most part, he's definitely the protagonist. He's
Yeah.
like, he's in charge, and he's going to make this
Inside verse
overall
3,
story end.
Inside verse 3, when he says that he's tired of playing a role.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that the playing the role thing in the relationship that's a really good one, and she's concerned about
And
You know.
not being straightforward.
right, and what are we doing here? Because she's so used to playing a role in a relationship. It's like, here's my role, that's your role, this is what we're doing. Because clearly, it seemed to be like that with her other well, certainly with John Hurd.
So the overall story, everybody's concerned with him going back to being a little boy. That's the goal.
Mm-mm. Everyone's
That's
concerned
the
with their own,
protagonist.
they're obtaining their own stuff.
That there's just like this really light overall story that has nothing to do with him getting his wish and getting back to being a little boy. Just the fact that there's this different frame of thought that's come into their lives that has disrupted it. Like if main character is like 75% of the story, influence character is 20, she's 5. I mean, overall story is like 20%. Because I don't see how she goes from opposed to support is her change, and then also how support somehow resolves the overall story for everybody. And success. It seems like I just don't feel like that follows through.
It's like you almost think his growth to an adult is like a shell story, and then there's a story that happens in between the bookends of him becoming an adult.
Yeah, I would say the whole adult thing is the main character through line, but that the overall story is just day-to-day business. There are these adults here who are just like, this is what and that's use terminology, but we've reduced child's toy making to this sort of thing. And then here comes this guy who comes along and says, no, there's all these different things that can be done. And engenders all this induction that people start doing because he's got this like kid's mind that hasn't just been reduced down to this woman who has just like he just slept her way to the top of it is that she's done. He's brought her down to. Because I don't see how support resolves anything if you're taking the context of, we have to get back to get this wish to get to Zoltan, whatever, how that resolves. And that's why I think it's not like most overall stories. It just seems like it's just this really kind of light part, where like the major part of it's the main character.
I do.
That's why I wonder if because we've come here forever, and it's like really hard. Like, oh, I don't see this, and I don't see that. Maybe this works. Whereas usually when you hit it, it's like, oh, this one's here, and then you go off for 10 minutes, and it's just like right there.
Right, right.
So I
It does seem
wonder
to be a bit of shoehorning.
Because I will admit, I will have to capitulate to the catalyst and inhibitors. The abilities are nice here, but I think the elements are completely wrong. Yeah, it's uncontrolled. It's anything to the story at all.
Well,
His
I mean, if
ability
you
to
think
be
of
free, I think. is
I
totally-
know what your argument is that he's.
But that's the only one I really love.
I
mean-
I don't feel it as much. I mean, I feel like when we actually get the story form, it's like, oh yeah, that's obvious. It's like that. I mean, if I'm not getting it.
So are you saying, by the way, activity, gathering information, issue of analysis,
I blow it. It comes in and blows it.
then a solution of induction?
What's that?
You're saying a solution of induction in the overall story?
No. So reduction is the problem. So I feel like the writer is saying, here's all the adults, and they have the author's intent is they are just reduced down to statistics and bar charts and analysis. And then, when what's his name talks about it, when Josh talks about it, he's like, well, yeah, you guys are just kind of basically copying what's already been successful. That's the symptom of production. Right? You're just doing what has always been done. And he's like, well, look, we could do this, or we could do that. And so in the meetings, everybody's in production, producing. We're using inductive reasoning. And then that's what, to me, that's the only overall story part that's there that involves everybody in the story. And I feel like that's what the author is trying to say, is that there's this childlike way of looking at things. She's got this more cynical way of looking at it. At the end, she's like, oh, there's always different possibilities of what could be. Hey, maybe in the future you can give me a call. As opposed to like, she's just support. I don't see her supporting. I don't know how that fits through as well as somebody who's like open to like, oh, look, there's always kind of this one.
So in his issue of work and attempt in that case would be like, he just does what he knows how to do,
Yeah.
which is play.
Yeah.
What he does is play.
Well, and for me, the issue of work too is like, I can get a job. I don't know what to do. Like the whole thing about what are my skills. Well, I know computers. I can do computers. He just does what he knows. Like certain things. Just know that that's what he do. Of course.
Right. He knows that buildings are no fun.
Yeah, and that's what like creates problems for people. It's not like he's actively like speaking out. It's not opposition. That's like causing conflict in the story.
Yeah, in some of those arguments, I was looking at like things like instinct and conditioning as being kind of the, an interpretation in senses. But that's a whole nother quadrant.
I'm assuming this is the story form you're looking at.
No.
This is not story formulation.
Well, you
No,
said
no, it should
you
be-
said the
it's-
solution was
Yeah,
possibility.
I think
I
Yes.
meant production.
I didn't say production.
You're saying an issue of analysis and a problem of reduction, right?
Problem is reduction.
Yeah. All right. So then that would put the main character under work, the problem with certainty,
I think the signpost is the same.
the influence. Actually, well,
Not, but
The issue of experience.
Main character, problem of certainty.
Yeah, so his drive is he just knows exactly what he likes.
But how
He
is
could, like
well, wait. Did you hang on? You picked the solution of production for the influence character?
well? That's what his argument was.
Oh, no, okay. That's also the solution for the overall story. Right. Okay.
thinking that the overall story is not about like, everybody's not concerned with getting the ring to doll. Like it's just this sort of light sort of commentary on the adult world. I feel like that's more like what they were trying to do. Now,
like
here's
success.
what I'm wondering. There is kind of the A story and there's kind of the B story. The A story, I mean, that the big goal is okay. Let's reset the undo the wish. But then the kind of the B story is the toy company, and is it possible that there's kind of a combination? I mean, I feel like the script was very well written. I feel like it's very tight. So I would be surprised if the story form was disjointed, because it didn't feel disjointed. It felt like it all fit. But is it possible that there are elements of two different story forms if you consider the A story and the B story, like you would in the TV, TV show?
I don't think there is. I mean, it's to me, it's so clearly about. I mean, the only thing I would say that you might reconsider was no. Okay. The only other way that could be this, and I don't think it is if you made the overall story. The argument you're making is if the overall story was a situation, and I don't think that's it. No. I understand that, but I think you're describing the story form we had before as if the overall story was a situation. Meaning, we're stuck. There's this kid in a 30-year-old body, and there's a problem because he's a 30-year-old kid in a 30-year-old body, and that's what the problem is going. And only once it's unstuck will the story be over. That would not be the story. So, with the main character in the situation and him being stuck, that's what he's dealing with. But the overall story is still about the kid, this Josh, in an adult world. This person who is the behavior of a child, but it is an adult, so he's being treated like an adult.
Totally agree.
Right. And I think that the difference is that because to me, I mean, this is just my own opinion. This particular story form doesn't read to me at all. I mean, it's very cerebral. And that may just be because I'm looking at the terms and I'm not as, as comfortable with them.
They're not laying.
They aren't, but that may be just because. This one right now, I'm not as comfortable with. Because I don't think it's about learning. I don't see anybody trying to learn anything. I don't see anybody.
So, and I'll just say I totally agree with you that it's not a situation. I was arguing.
No. This is an activity domain gathering information. Right.
So, I feel like it's boy coming to teach adults how they should be. So it's not learning; it's teaching them. It's like, look, this is how you guys should be doing it. And that's creating problems. Because then the guy who's in charge is like, hey, let's listen to this guy. Let's see what he's. I'm going to give him an office. I'm going to do this because he's in charge of the strategy. What we're going to do.
Right, but he's not putting that. What he didn't seem to me to be doing was saying, you guys have to learn from this guy. He wasn't. No, not at all. What he was doing was, I like the way you think. You go off and do what you're going to do. And, we'll see what happens, because I've got my guys, and you think a lot like me, so I'm gonna let you do what you do, and so that there's this sort of proximity, but it's not about old dog new tricks type thing. It really does seem to me about everybody's concerned about getting ahead. Everybody concerned. I mean, literally concerned about about finding out information from the boss, finding out who's getting a new job or go to a new office, or whose project is going to get approved and whose project isn't getting approved, and how do you figure out how to get it approved? Well, you look at what the gross, the amount of sales it's going to affect. I mean, that seems to be where they're all focused on is looking at increasing sales, increasing it. And what he's doing, he's coming in and disrupting all of that, but not changing things. I mean, the things that he's suggesting by doing stuff instead of, relying on, trying to constantly protect your job, is that he's making suggestions on how to do things differently, and it will make more money. you know, and you can do this, 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 because I don't see anybody else picking up on this stuff. It's not like there's any learning or training or education, and I mean that in the most broadest sense. I'm not talking about teaching, but I mean, you know, I don't see there's no transference of it at all to anybody else in the company.
There's like guys in the meetings that are like, oh, yeah, we could do
No, they're
But they
following him.
But they don't learn from them. They don't come into the next meeting with better ideas.
Right. I mean, he seems to say, oh, even she doesn't. She's like, she's just receiving all this stuff that he's like a fount of, you know, knowledge because he's a kid. You know, he's just the sort of this resource they have that they've got, and it's like, wow, this is great. You know, this will. It only costs this much, and we can sell it for that much. You know, that's what everybody is concerned about. How much does it cost? How much can we make with it? You know, and he is not, which makes him unfathomable to everybody in the office.
So the whole argument is she moves from opposed to support.
All right, can I just set
That's-
some modification on that, because that which will require undoing past as the signpost 3, the main character.
Right, and I don't have any problem with that.
What if the problem solution became consider reconsider?
Problem solution of what?
Well, the overall story of overall story problem consider. All right. It's just a few things that still have a critical. Let's see, ability of hope, courage. All right.
I don't like this one.
You don't?
With
Well,
him,
main
is his
character
problem of conscience?
Yeah.
His
I
dream-
just the only reason why I would like that is if you're gonna go with the whole context of the future, like my concern is my mom. Then he's driven, you know, the conscience of doing.
Oh,
the
well,
right thing to do
okay.
there, and then he goes to be an adult, and then he slips into temptation, and then he comes back to conscience.
Okay.
That feels good.
Yeah, that does.
And I like the ability.
The ability to delay. So that's
I can see.
is just
And the overall solution is that he gets everyone to reconsider how they think about toys.
Well, the thing is that we don't. The problem is that part of the story is interrupted.
yeah, I said the part of the story.
That part of if you look at the toy manufacturing part as the main story, which I don't think it is, it's interrupted. But if you do look at it as, you know, reconsider for him at the end, and essentially what Billy is telling him, you know, you really need to reconsider, which is what he does, and that's when he basically goes and is able to power the magic box, you know, because it doesn't derive power from electricity. It derives it from drive, from motivation. That's why you have to get really angry and pound on it. Suddenly, oh, I've got enough energy here to run.
You know what I like about this too is the feeling in response for both the main character and the overall story. It does get rid of all the feelings of conflict without actually getting rid of the actual deeper problem.
Right.
Right, which is really nice. That he has fun in his house with his trampoline, so isn't it nice being an adult? But that doesn't take away the fact that he misses his family.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
That'll change the act order.
Relationship.
Yeah, that's what's
Hmm.
you know, and again, it's you know,
Huh?
Don't care about it.
yeah. Well, I mean, you could reinterpret that sequence that we're calling the past as we could see it as a concern of the future. It's like that's what I would be going back to if I, you know,
That's a real
It really doesn't feel right.
no.
But I'm exercising my arms.
I think there are other. I think that there are other things that could be easily, like the preconditions, or or even the four warnings. Well, it is. That's yeah. It's his
Preconditioned
benchmark.
memory. Well, okay.
Yeah, those are okay. Be more of the four warnings. I think this is what you're going to lose if you continue down this path. But that's a little weak.
We were talking about help and hinder earlier. Problem between them is hope. Well, the thing is, they kind of get into a relationship because she is trying to sort of help him fit into the adult world, which is problematic. No.
She's trying to.
Isn't it
I feel like she's trying to
use-
help her boyfriend figure out where this guy came from, which is why she goes to talk to him,
Mm.
and then goes like, "Oh, you're actually charming to be with. I came here with bad reasons, but I'm sticking around because you're honest."
Right.
Because
She's trying to seduce him. Is where they start. I mean, it's no question that she's
With ulterior motive. Yeah, she has.
It's nice of the idea that she used to
Do whatever you want.
I'm sorry, what?
Isn't the implication that she used to seduce people before? That's what she
That's basically her modus operandi. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's-
So I can
I
do whatever.
like that. I like this.
I mean, if anything, she's trying to help herself.
Yeah.
You know, so, but
Right, because even when she leaves with him, she's like, "What is this guy doing?" Like when at the
Right.
party, she's disgusted by him. She's still leaving with him because she has ulterior motives.
right.
You should rationalization.
I like rationalization.
Yeah, no, I like that much better.
Rationalization as the relationship issue.
okay, yeah, I do.
Well, you also have rationalization as her critical flaw, which it's all right.
She'll put up examples.
Right.
You know where
Well, can rationalization also be interpreted as or illustrated as overthinking? Is that-
No, it's pretty much making excuses or you know, not addressing the real issue by potting it off as something else. Which she does. She's like not only her, pretty much everybody in that, but she and John Hurt are constantly rationalizing, and she moves out of that though. I mean, that's the thing is that she does, and but you see him slowly moving into it. So I think that, you know, the reason I would stay here is because of you, even though I shouldn't be here. But,
This one's better than the other.
it's okay. It's all right. I mean, I like it being an approach. I think that's attitude or approach. Those are both good for the overall story issue. I think approach is stronger because it's his approach that is what causes all sorts of
catalyst of self-interest. You know, conflict is
Yeah.
is
that
increased
was
when self-interests are being threatened.
yeah. It's just the logic feeling thing is a little weird, but
But I think that's when you're looking for the author's intent, I really kind of think that's. where
no,
you
I know
are.
it's like
It's
so
real
you're
weird.
throwing this logic out here why it should be working. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't feel. It's not fun.
Doesn't feel right.
It's not fun.
I like
Yeah.
that. I'm not sure it works for. I like that in the overall story. I'm not sure what it is.
Well, but again, I think
Well, no, isn't he told, oh, he's going to just sit there and wait 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, he responds to situations. You know, it's the head versus heart argument, and he kind of steadfastly goes with his heart. When he starts going with his head,
well, like
He's
filling out the
his way.
form and those kinds of things, right? You know, but he's smart enough to know that when he makes logic errors a lot, meaning he understands that the causality of the world of grown-ups is not at all where he is, when he's aware of it, then he just sort of goes with what feels like the right response to go give. But where he creates conflict is like, you have something bad in your mouth. The logical response is to spit it out. When you've got something in your hand you don't need anymore, then you put it down. It's sort of like, what is that guy doing? Someone tells you that if you say hi to this person, they're going to wrap their legs around you. Then obviously you don't want to say hi, and you want to get afraid and run away.
Yeah.
All right, I'm okay with this. I wasn't married to the other one.
Oh,
No, so
I was having a hard time illustrating support and opposing myself.
yeah, it was difficult. It wasn't impossible. I mean, help and hinder to me, I has the same problem, but it's help is the problem in the relationship. I mean, I could see she's sort of coming along and sort of kind of like, let me help you, and it's not really, it's not genuine. But that's
or is it in terms of
is it really helping?
Yeah,
Yes,
this isn't helping our relationships. But the solution is the solution is, I've got to go back. You can make the wish yourself, but no,
right. It
the
makes it more
solution is to
difficult.
hinder that romantic relationship, and maybe put it off for 10 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Whereas helping the relationship is what's creating problems. It is the wrong path, and it is the wrong morale or the wrong value in the story. Is
Right.
to help that.
Okay.
Relationship
That I buy that. Actually, that's an objective way of looking at it, which is the appropriate way of looking at it. Okay.
An objective way of looking at the subject.
Well, you have to. I mean, Dramatica is objective, so that's the problem with it. Even though you're talking about something that's subjective, you're really being objective about that subjectivity. Well, cool. Then I believe this is a fair representation of what we have seen. And again, whenever we're dealing with comedy, it's so hard to separate the story from the storytelling. But I thought this one had a lot of substance to it, especially for a comedy. It really had a lot more there.
Yeah. There's a certain sophistication in its simplicity.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's it. So, yes, I do. So do I just say stop sharing?
Stop sharing, but then goes. Well, you don't need to do that. But stop.